According to Hebrews 13, we are told not to be forgetful to entertain strangers, for by doing so some have entertained angels unawares. Family, we should also be careful that we are not entertaining demonic spirits. The purpose for this session is to help you see how close we are to the end. I encourage you to do self-examinations often to know the condition of your soul. It is time to get your house in order because Lucifer's time is short, and he knows it. He has been secretly working through the elite to bring about his evil agenda using science, technology, sorcery, and other wicked means. In this session, we're going to see how science is proving Scripture to be true. Let's begin by looking at some of the advances happening in the world right now. You all, these folks are not that smart. They want us to think that they are, but they are actually being influenced by otherworldly beings. The seed of the fallen is still here. They are the ones giving information to the Luciferian elite. They are the puppet masters. But this is not new. It has happened before. We will get to that later in the session. But before we go there, I want to take a look at some of the things that are playing out right now before our eyes, and many are not paying attention to these signs. This article comes from the Eurasian Times, and this was on June 3rd. It says, world's first anti-hypersonic system. China says it is ready with an AI-powered defense against Mach 5 plus missiles. Listen to this. It says, Chinese military researchers claim to have developed artificial intelligence technology that can predict the trajectory of a hypersonic glide missile as it approaches a target at speeds exceeding 5 times that of sound, South China Morning Post reported. It says it is extremely difficult to track a hypersonic glide missile due to its unpredictable trajectory and the ability to enter space and re-enter the atmosphere in a very short period of time. Countries like the U.S. are also relentlessly working on developing air missile defense against hypersonic missiles. So we don't even have anything close to this yet. Let's read some excerpts from this Big Think article. It says today's technological advancements occur exponentially, and the average person will have to adjust to changes that would have previously taken several generations. So how are they able to achieve these advancements so quickly? That's the question we should be asking. Let's continue on with the article. So most of you have heard about Elon Musk. He seems to be in the news every single day talking about some new advancement. And in this article, he actually talks about being very close to the cutting edge of AI and how it scares him. Says he's scared by it. Listen to what he says. He says, it is capable of vastly more than anyone knows, and the rate of improvement is exponential. We have to figure out some way to ensure that the advent of digital superintelligence is one which is symbiotic with humanity. He says, I think that's the biggest exponential crisis that we face. So the article goes on to say Bostrom and Musk paint worst-case scenarios, but there are plenty of worries over artificial superintelligence that don't end in human genocide. Is that the end goal? Human genocide? It says experts have postulated that AI could automate terrorism, mass produce propaganda, and streamline hacking to devastating effects. Folks, these people really want us to believe that they are just brilliant. Actually, some of them may be hybrids. Don't rule that out. But you have to know that this acceleration in science and technology is coming from somewhere. It's coming from elsewhere, other worldly sources. So let's take a look at some passages in the book of Enoch and see if it will lead us to the ultimate goal of the fallen. So this is coming from the book of Enoch, and we're reading from chapter 7. It says, "It happened after the sons of men had multiplied in those days, that daughters were born to them, elegant and beautiful. And when the angels, the sons of heaven, beheld them, they became enamored of them, saying to each other, 'Come, let us select for ourselves wives from the progeny of men, and let us beget children.'" Now the Aramaic text reads watchers instead of saying angels here. It's saying that the watchers are saying this. Let's go on to verse 3. It says, "Then their leader, Samyaja, said to them, 'I fear that you may perhaps be indisposed to the performance of this enterprise, and that I alone shall suffer for so grievous a crime.'" So they knew it was a crime. They knew it was wrong before they did it. So this act was intentional. "But they answered him and said, 'We all swear and bind ourselves by mutual execrations that we will not change our intention, but execute our projected undertaking.' Then they swore all together, and all bound themselves by mutual execrations. Their whole number was 200, who descended upon Ardis." And other texts say that this is Mount Hermon. So it says they descended upon Ardis, which is the top of Mount Hermon. All right, verse 7. "That mountain therefore was called Hermon, because they had sworn upon it and bound themselves by mutual execrations." Now, these verses are simply corroborating Genesis 6, where we're told that the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they laid with them, and then they begat giants. Let's keep going. Let's pick up with verse 10. It says, "Then they took wives, each choosing for himself, whom they began to approach, and with whom they cohabitated, teaching them," listen to what they taught these women, "sorcery, incantations, and the dividing of roots and trees," witchcraft. So the difference between sorcery and incantation is that sorcery is magical power, the use of witchcraft or magic arts. But incantations, they are like formulas or rhyming words that are sung or spoken that's used during occult ceremonies, and they use them to raise or invoke spirits or to do enchantments or create other magical results. So pay attention to the things that they taught these women. Now let's go on, verse 11. "And the women conceiving brought forth giants." Again, this confirms Genesis 6 that told us they gave birth to giants. All right, so it says, verse 12, "Whose stature was each 300 cubits. These devoured all which the labor of men produced, until it became impossible to feed them." So these giants were huge, and you can imagine being, someone of such a large stature, you would need to eat a lot of food. So it says they devoured or ate everything men produced, and it was not enough. So what happened? Verse 13, They turned against men and began devouring them. They started eating men. Verse 14, and begin to injure birds, beasts, reptiles, and fishes, to eat their flesh one after another, and to drink their blood. Now you're going to hear confirmation of this in a few minutes. But I want you to remember the things that's going on here. First, we see that they are mating with these women who then give birth to giants. And then they are teaching these women sorcery and witchcraft. And then these giants, the men can't produce enough food to feed them, so they begin eating humans and drinking their blood. What else? They begin to injure birds, beasts, reptiles, fishes. In other words, they're manipulating DNA, splicing DNA, and creating other hybrids that would be big enough for them to eat. They had to sustain themselves. Let's keep going. Now, there has been a concerted effort to cover up the fact that giants were actually here. Why would they want to hide that fact? Let's read an excerpt from Charisma magazine. It says, "Not science fiction, definitive proof that biblical giants existed." So it says, for hundreds of years, theologians have debated and speculated about a bizarre passage of scripture in Genesis 6 that tells the account of angels mating with humans and creating a race of giant hybrids. So what's interesting is that it's the theologians who are debating and trying to debunk what is written in scripture. Go figure. It says, while some may contend that this is only science fiction, author and filmmaker L.A. Marzulli, in his book On the Trail of the Nephilim, offers definitive proof that these biblical giants truly existed, his search for the Nephilim has taken him to Paracas, Peru, and other relatively unknown places in South America, leaving no stone unturned to reveal this incredible supernatural mystery. It says Marzulli first learned about the Nephilim when he read Dr. I.D.E. Thomas's The Omega Conspiracy, widely accepted by many in the field of archaeology. The concept of his book, Marzulli says, stems from Genesis 3:15, where God says to Satan, "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He will bruise your head, and you will bruise his heel." Yet the theologians are the ones debating and speculating. Imagine that. Let's keep going. So we know that scripture is true, and I honestly believe that it will be undeniable in these last days. And for those rejecting the truth of scripture, it will be because they want to be deceived and they choose to have Lucifer as their God. Let's read some excerpts from this Ancient Origins article. It says, ancient race of white giants described in native legends from many tribes, and we'll just look at a few of them. It says, Cushman said Nuhalo came to be used to describe all white people, but it originally referred specifically to a giant white race with whom the Choctaw came into contact when they first crossed the Mississippi River. The Nahalo were said to be cannibals, whom the Choctaw killed whenever the opportunity arose. So the Comanches says, it says, Chief Rolling Thunder of the Comanches, a tribe from the Great Plains, gave the following account of an ancient race of white giants in 1857. So does this confirm what we find in the book of Enoch, where he says the children that were born to these women, and the watchers had white skin. All right, it says, this is an account of an ancient race of white giants in 1857. Innumerable moons ago, a race of white men, 10 feet tall and far more rich and powerful than any white people now living here, inhabited a large range of country extending from the rising to the setting sun. Their fortifications crowned the summits of the mountains, protecting their populous cities situated in the intervening valleys. So listen to a quote from this chief. It says, they excelled every other nation which was flourished, either before or since, in all manner of cunning handicraft, were brave and warlike, ruling over the land they had wrested from its ancient possessors with a high and haughty hand. Compared with them, the pale faces of the present day were pygmies in both art and arms. So it says the chief explained that when this race forgot justice and mercy and became too proud, the Great Spirit wiped it out, and all that was left of their society were the mounds still visible on the tablelands. The account was documented by Dr. Donald Panther Yates, a researcher and author of the books on Native American history, on his blog. So the Navajo also have accounts. It says Yates also writes of the Starnake people of Navajo legend, describing them as a regal race of white giants endowed with mining technology, pick up on that word, who dominated the West, enslaved lesser tribes, and had strongholds all through the Americas. They were either extinguished or went back to the heavens. Interesting. Let's keep going. Now, this last portion comes from the Manta tribe. They told their story to author Pedro de Leon in 1153, and he wrote what they said in the Chronicles of Peru. Listen to this quote. It says, there arrived on the coast in boats made of reeds as big as large ships, a party of men of such size that from the knee downwards their height was as great as the entire height of an ordinary man, though he might be of good stature. Their limbs were all in proportion to the deformed size of their bodies, and it was a monstrous thing to see their heads with hair reaching to the shoulders. Their eyes were as large as small plates. Listen to the last part of what he wrote. Leon said that the sexual habits of the giants were revolting to the natives, and heaven eventually wiped out the giants because of those habits. So how did the Native Americans know about that? Were the giants engaging in these acts out in the open? Let's keep going. Now take a look at this article from salemnews.com. This is from Wednesday, June 1st, 2022. It says, the archaeologists came to the inescapable conclusion that the Paiutes myth was no myth. It was true. Well, what was the myth? It says the Paiutes, a Native American tribe indigenous to parts of Nevada, Utah, and Arizona, told early white settlers about their ancestors' battles with a ferocious race of white, red-haired giants. According to the Paiutes, the giants were already living in the area. So it says roaming, man-eating giants. It says the Paiutes named the giants Saitika, that literally means tool eaters. The tool is a fibrous water plant the giants wove into rafts to escape the Paiutes' continuous attacks. So they used the rafts to navigate across what remained of Lake Lahontan. According to the Paiutes, the red-haired giants stood as tall as 12 feet and were a vicious, unapproachable people that killed and ate captured Paiutes as food. So listen to the legend now. It says the Paiutes told the early settlers that after many years of warfare, all the tribes in the area finally joined together to rid themselves of the giants. One day, as they chased down the few remaining red-haired enemy, the fleeing giants took refuge in a cave. The tribal warriors demanded their enemy come out and fight, but the giants steadfastly refused to leave their sanctuary. Frustrated at not defeating their enemy with honor, the tribal chiefs had warriors fill the entrance to the cavern with brush and then set it on fire in a bid to force the giants out of the cave. The few that did emerge were instantly slain with volleys of arrows. The giants that remained inside the cavern were asphyxiated. All right, it says later an earthquake rocked the region and the cave entrance collapsed, leaving only enough room for bats to enter it and make it their home. So hundreds of years later, archaeologists explored the cavern near Lovelock, Nevada, the cave the Indians had described. What the scientific researchers found was staggering. Over 10,000 artifacts were unearthed, including the mummified remains of 2 red-haired giants, one a female, 6.5 feet tall, the other male, over 8 feet tall. Many of the artifacts, but not the giants, can be viewed at the small Natural History Museum located in Nevada. So it says as they excavated this cave, as the excavation progressed, the archaeologists came to the inescapable conclusion that the Paiutes myth was no myth, it was true. What led them to this realization was the discovery of many broken arrows that had been shot into the cave and a dark layer of burned material under sections of the overlaying guano. It says, among the thousands of artifacts recovered from the site of an unknown people is what some scientists are convinced is a calendar, a donut-shaped stone with exactly 365 notches carved along its outside rim and 52 corresponding notches along the inside. But that was not to be the final chapter of red-haired giants in Nevada. In February and June of 1931, 2 very large skeletons were found in the Humboldt dry lake bed near Lovelock, Nevada. More giants have been unearthed in other states. So if Scripture is telling us that in the last days we will see things that were going on in the days of Noah, we should ask the question, are we witnessing these things now, but we're not putting it all together and we can't see what's happening right before our eyes? I believe so. So let's identify what was happening in Noah's day. We know that man received knowledge from fallen angels. Hybrids were being created through gene splicing and DNA manipulation. Cannibalism was going on, and they were drinking each other's blood. Sorcery and witchcraft. This was prevalent at the time and at the root of a lot of this. So we should expect to see an increase in these behaviors because we know that these are some of the trademarks of the fallen, right? Again, these things may be happening, but we just don't know what we're looking at. So I want to highlight a few things.
If you saw him in the street, he wouldn't rate a second glance. He looks so ordinary, but he's not. Armand Mivas is a cannibal. In March 2001, he killed a man and ate him along with a glass of fine red wine, a crime so bizarre it horrified and mystified the world. You see, Mivas's victim was a willing accomplice. He actually wanted to be eaten, a rare case of what they call love cannibalism. Now you're going to meet this quiet, unassuming man who became a monster. For the first time, he tells his chilling story, and I should warn that at times it's quite graphic and could distress some viewers.
They're calling him the Cannibal Cop. Hey everyone, it's David Begnaud. We're getting more details in that outrageous story in New York City. The Daily News is reporting Gilbert Valle is a married father of one who lived here. The Daily News also got access to the inside of Valle's home. You can see a baby stroller there in the corner. So the FBI says Valle, a New York City police officer, wanted to cook and eat dozens of women in a bizarre kidnap and torture plot. You just can't make it up. The FBI claims to have disturbing online chats between Valle and an unnamed partner, like this one. My oven is big enough to fit one of these girls if I folded their legs. The abduction will have to be flawless. I was thinking of tying her body onto some kind of apparatus and cook her over a low heat. Keep her alive as long as possible.
So listen to this. This comes from The Independent, and this was written in December of 2021. It says, Idaho man charged with cannibalism, believed eating victim would cure him. An Idaho man has been charged with murder and cannibalism after the death of a 70-year-old man. Let's keep going. Another one from Fox News. Florida man accused of killing two, eating man's face. Believed he was half dog, half man, doctor says. This is a former college student, and he is accused of fatally attacking a husband and wife in their Florida home and gnawing on the man's face. He believed he was half dog, half man. You all, cannibalism and the desire to drink human blood continued in many countries. But if it is to be as it was in the days of Noah, we will see it wax greater and greater. Another thing that was happening during the days of Noah was the creation of hybrids and the splicing of DNA. Is it happening today?
Human chimeras living among us, it's only science fiction for right now. Yesterday, the Senate passed the Endless Frontier Act, a bill that commits nearly $250 billion to promote emerging technologies so that America can keep pace with Chinese innovation. Back in May, Democrats shot down an important amendment outlawing U.S. participation in research that would create human-animal hybrids, also known as chimeras. China's already doing it, announcing in April that an international team successfully grew human monkey embryos and sustained them for 20 days in a lab.
As you can see, science and technology is being used to lead the world somewhere. And the end result will be beings that were not created by the Most High. So what else was going on in the days of Noah? Well, they had a lot of sorcery and witchcraft. And in this next video, which is going to be very hard to watch, so much so that I could only include certain sections of it, but you're going to see how the seed of the serpent is using the innocent in their sexual perversion and witchcraft to appease Lucifer. This is how the powers that be get the knowledge that they need for these new advancements. They have to worship these demons by engaging in perverse behaviors and offering blood sacrifices. So you can go to 60 Minutes and look for the title Satan's Children if you want to see the full interview. Let's take a look at this.
To describe this story as horrifying would be an understatement. And if that sounds like a warning, then that's exactly what it's meant to be. It deals with the sexual abuse of children by satanic cults. And not only that, human sacrifices as well. We started investigating these secret satanic cults when a British Member of Parliament linked them with the ritual murder of children. In this day and age, it sounded too far-fetched, as did suggestions that the same thing might be happening in Australia. But then we met Teresa. She's only 15 and for 12 of those years she's been the victim of relentless depravity. Teresa's story is both shocking and compelling, yet it's a story she's anxious to tell. But again, we should warn you that parts of this report may be distressing.
Friends of the family and strangers and my family used to rape me, make me abort the babies I had.
It would be hard to imagine more misery and suffering than what Teresa says she's had to endure.
And us kids would be made to do things with the adults and the animals, and then a sacrifice would happen.
The sacrifice, were these animal sacrifices?
Animals and people.
On what scale do you think this was happening?
Enormous.
Sadly, this is not only happening in Britain, it's happening all over the world. The fallen taught men how to do these things because Satan wants worship. Let's keep going with this.
Who was the leader? Who was the boss of the gang, of the cult?
At home it was my nan.
Your nan made you have sex with animals?
Yeah. Like goats and donkeys.
If you're finding this hard to believe, so did I at first. But then there are the medical reports. Evidence of sustained sexual abuse. And there's this, a statement prepared for 60 Minutes by Teresa's psychiatrist. It says, in my opinion, Teresa's account is not the product of a psychotic illness, nor the figment of a fertile imagination. I believe her to be telling the truth.
I know what's true and what's not.
We also took Teresa's story to this man, therapist Ray Wire. He reads a transcript of our interview and listens to her voice.
It's no dream.
Few people, if any, in Britain have counselled as many victims of satanic abuse or Satanists themselves as Ray Wire has. If there is an expert on satanic cults, it would have to be him.
Do you believe Teresa's story?
I believe Teresa's story. It's exactly the same story as I've heard from men who says they've done it.
You've dealt with other cases like hers?
Yes.
21 cases like hers, he says, in the past 2 years alone.
Themes like they were put in boxes with spiders and worms, where they were trapped in fear, where there was a high use of excrement and urine, where there was talk of human sacrifice.
Take just one of those rituals, putting children in boxes with spiders and worms.
Now, I have to admit that when I first heard this story, I found it hard to believe. I go back to a statement that Pastor Darby said. He said, we don't realize how wicked really is. And you know why we can't comprehend this? Is because we are forgetting that these people are being controlled by demonic, wicked forces.
During these ceremonies, was Satan, the devil, ever referred to?
He was called Lucifer.
What did they say about the devil, about Lucifer?
That killing the people made him happy.
Sacrifices to please the devil. According to Teresa, the worst rituals took place at a house somewhere in the country.
It was big, expensive. From the front, it looked like a castle. It had a long drive and big double wooden doors.
Do you think they were rich people then?
Very rich.
Hearing that is incredibly disturbing. Folks, we are not waiting for the last days. We are living in it. It's happening all around us. The wicked are engaging in satanic rituals, and most of them are in high positions of power. They are using the tools that were given to them by the fallen angels. Why? They have to gain and remain in power to carry out the work of Satan. And they know that they have to protect those secrets at all costs. People are coming up missing for a reason. Children are being snatched and exploited for a reason. They know that they can gain more power when they use the blood of the innocent. And this is why they silenced Epstein. Think about the names connected to him. So one thing to keep in mind is that the fallen engaged in those practices for their own benefit. The things that they were teaching were not supposed to benefit man. It was for the benefit of the fallen angels. They only use the Luciferian elite to create a narrative to make the masses think that it will benefit mankind. So you hear things like, here, take this antidote, because we want to save lives. But then they offer an antidote for something they created in the first place. And then they tell you, just trust the science. There were some preachers who joined in on the mantra, just trust the science. Forget about trusting the Most High, right? You have to be discerning. You have to know which ones are speaking the words of life and which ones are giving you words of death. This is where we have to be wise to the ways of the enemy. He appears as an angel of light, and Scripture tells us that the enemy only comes to kill, steal, and destroy. They want destruction that will bring about a reset that will change the verdict that they were given. Could they be trying to find a way to reverse their curse? We'll talk about that in the next session. If this message has been a blessing to you, please hit the like, hit share, and join me next time. Shalom, everyone.